Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now if you saw my video a couple of days ago, you'll remember that I purchased this Radeon R9 290 from eBay for the low price of £30, roughly $40. Once a blazingly fast flagship, this Powercolor model was showing signs of instability, as stated in the eBay ad, and hence its cheap price. In the last video I assumed the issues were to do with driver and heat problems, and while the card did shoot up to 95 degrees and shut off almost immediately in newer games, the initial problem was with the card actually crashing for no apparent reason. I left off last time saying I was going to buy an aftermarket cooler, after I thought I had eliminated the crashing issues and only had the heat problem to deal with, but it seems that this was far from the case and the card crashed again last night. A few times in a row. Thanks to all of your suggestions, I decided to put that aftermarket cooler on hold, as lowering the load temperatures would have just been masking the bigger problem. I therefore decided to give flashing the card's BIOS a try. To do this, I headed on over to Tech Power Up and downloaded ATI WinFlash. They've also got an extensive GPU BIOS database over there too, and I was able to select the manufacturer and model number of my card in order to download the latest stable BIOS version. Just to be safe, I swapped my Ryzen 5 1600 out with the 2400G, so that if anything went wrong and I accidentally bricked my graphics card, I could boot up into Windows using the integrated graphics and try and reflash the card again. Luckily though, all went well, and the process was a simple and straightforward one. It's always a better idea to flash a VGA BIOS through a DOS prompt as opposed to inside Windows itself, so if you want to do this yourself, I'd recommend watching a good few videos on the subject first to understand the pros, cons and risks a little better. I took the chance and did it through Windows just to get it done as quick as possible, and I've got plenty of time on my hands to work on getting the card fixed again should anything have gone wrong. After flashing the stock BIOS and restarting, I uninstalled and reinstalled the AMD drivers once again and had no idea if this would fix things. I left the PC on overnight, something I never do, so at this time it's been on for about 20 hours and I've been using it for about 6 doing various things. When it did crash again last night, it did so randomly while the PC was unused, so I'm pretty certain it's okay. None of this did much for these stock temperatures of course, but the difference lies in the temperature under load while gaming, so it was time to get into that now and see how this thing holds up in some modern titles, or just whether or not it holds up at all, without failing. Jumping into a few games, and the first thing I noticed was the improved load temperatures. Yesterday the card was racing up to 95 degrees and powering off in newer titles like Dirt 4. This could be remedied by turning the fan way up in MSI Afterburner, but little did I know at the time it still could have failed at any moment. This time though, I managed to get through a few hour-long gaming session not just with a newly stable card, but with a slightly cooler one too, even if it does still sound like this. As you can see though, this thing is still quite the beast, making very light work of dirt. Before I get too much further in, I just want to mention that this up here is a lie. I've still got the Ryzen 5 2400G in the PC and forgot to relabel it in Afterburner before testing all the games. Moving on, and funnily enough, the eBay seller actually watches this channel and recognised the card in the video, so they then contacted me and said that CSGO proved to be quite the problem, not because of the temperatures, but because the R9 290 always crashed before it even had a chance to get warm. I knew then that this would have to be tested, and after playing a few matches both off and online, I'm happy to report that I saw no errors. I even edited this whole video with the card in the system and it held up just fine. After this discovery I could relax a little and focus on more of what this card could do with some new and exciting titles. With that thought in mind, I moved on to Dark Souls Remastered. It's pretty limited for graphical options, so running this game at Full HD and anti-aliasing on meant a solid, consistent 60 frames per second. Fraps didn't work to actually record those percentile figures, but I literally saw no fluctuation from 60 on this level of the game. PUBG with its constant performance updates also ran very well at above 60 FPS most of the time. There will be a few drops in performance the moment you land on the ground, but the game soon smoothed itself out and I was able to leave this one on high settings. When I put the graph on screen in a second, you'll see the little air to ground stutter reflected by the 0.1% low figure, but overall it was a pretty flawless experience here. In Fallout 4 I let the game decide its own preset and it chose high. I also left the 60 FPS cap on, a target that the R9 was able to solidly maintain through my half an hour or so gameplay period. The blower fan was still whirring away on auto mode in Afterburner and keeping us below 90 degrees most of the time, in fact all of the time. So far so good. Far Cry 5 also ran well, though would benefit from lower settings than I had selected. I chose high and saw 40 FPS average. I did experiment with a few different presets and found that there was still some stutter regardless, so I thought why not enjoy the benefits of some extra eye candy. Of course performance preferences differ from person to person, so you may want to opt for normal or low with AA off or reduced, to touch on 60 FPS a little more, if you'd rather 60 frames per second than a better looking game. AC Origins on the other hand, well, not so much. Having said that though, in my experience this game is greedy and likes more than 4 physical cores, so this one might be the fault of the Ryzen 5, but it does also have a thing or two against older GPU architectures. Hey, it still runs, and once again those stutters will be there on any setting, no matter what you choose with this card. Battlefield 1 was an important one for me to retest because it's the game that pushed the GPU over the edge the other day, but here I was able to get through the opening couple of levels without any flames, smoke or shutdowns. I would still absolutely recommend an aftermarket cooler to replace a blower style stock R9 290 fan, but as I mentioned before, that stopped becoming the priority once I realised we still had issues. Issues that now seem to be resolved, but I'll be keeping this card in my system all week and updating you next Saturday. A current favourite game of mine is Kingdom Come Deliverance. The game was still on the very high settings from when my 1070 was in the system, but I gave it a go anyway, which proved a little too much here. But I have to say that at medium this card handled this open world medieval RPG very well. I'm particularly happy about that as I've been playing it a lot again recently. So I guess there we have it. Now, is buying a broken GPU on eBay in hopes of fixing it a good idea? Probably not, but if you think it's within your level of repair expertise, then go ahead and go for it. I mean, from doing it I've managed to find a pretty good deal I think on an R9 290. On this occasion it was just a simple flash of the BIOS, which seemed to eliminate all of those stability problems. As always, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Like it if you enjoyed it, dislike it if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I'm going to go and shop for a few more faulty cards to see if we can't fix them up. So, thank you and I'll see you again soon.